Okay, we're going to continue talking about CNN blackmail. That's the hashtag, and that's what people are calling this, with Keith Levenberg, frequent guest on the show. And, I try to bring you really smart people. The show is not really about me. It's about me facilitating interviews with people who may do other things for a living but are really smart and really good at expressing their opinions, and Keith certainly fits that category. And, Keith, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me back.
Your thoughts, your initial thoughts at least, about this CNN story, which is shocking to me in the sense that how stupid they are.
It is pretty shocking, and it's even more concerning than that. I mean, it's really emblematic of just one of the ways our culture has just, gone down the tubes in the last, couple of years. Is here you have this guy who, for now, at least as far as I've heard, remains anonymous, but has committed the thought crime of, espousing some views that are contrary to the views of CNN. And, the report is that he also created some, legitimately racist memes or whatever. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm happy to assume that it's true. But this whole idea, even if you do assume that that's true, where, society collectively says, this person has transgressed our norms, therefore they must be destroyed. It is just really awful, and I don't know what happened, that brought us to this place. You hear cases like this all the time. The guy who was forced out as chief executive of Mozilla because people decided they didn't like his views on gay marriage. Apparently, the reporter behind this CNN story was the same reporter behind a woman who made an offhand joke on her way onto an airplane, and then by the time she got off the airplane, she'd been made the laughing stock of the internet and was fired from her job.
I don't even remember that one. What was the joke? What was that one about?
Oh, it's Google it. You'll see it associated with this reporter. It's back in the news now that this reporter's back in the news. I don't want to name of the woman and perpetuate the damage that's already been done to her reputation. But she had a quick one-line tweet that this reporter decided was racially insensitive. She gets on an airplane where she's not on the internet, and then by the time she gets off the airplane, her phone's buzzing with alerts or whatever. She's the most hated person on the planet for a 24-hour period. So just like the Orwellian 2 minutes hate, and she's out of a job or whatever. It's just I think what brought us to this point, it's that age-old comment I think that Charles Krauthammer had originally come up with, which is the fundamental truth in American politics is that conservatives think liberals are stupid and misguided, but liberals think conservatives are evil, bad, malevolent people. And so what do you do when you think someone is just dumb or misinformed? You generally try to persuade them to see things your way. You hope that they could be reasoned with logically. But what do you do when you think someone is just a bad person? There's no trying to reason that away. Evil is outside the realm of persuasion. So the reaction of the left and the reaction of the culture at large these days, which is increasingly dominated by the left, is we're not going to try to persuade people to see things our way. We're going to identify the people that we think are bad people, and we're going to destroy them. And how did we get to the point where that's okay?
Well, I think it's just, look, as this stuff keeps going on, keep in mind what has happened to the branches of government, including at the state legislatures and governments. What has happened to CNN, I think they're just stupid, honestly. There is such a, not to bring up the name of the show, but I am bringing up the name of the show because that's part of the theme. There's such a backlash against this. What was the decision-making process by which CNN went after this guy? What was the upside of doing this? Like, there aren't thousands of more people who could do the same thing? Okay, so they shut this one guy up. What is the possible negative repercussions? Their huge business becomes that much more of a joke. Really, and look who got Trump elected. Look, CNN, Trump does this to make people distract people from what he's doing that might be controversial. Meanwhile, he may slip another Supreme Court justice in there while they're talking about this nonsense, and Trump knows this. Trump could have looked so, to a lot of the population, including myself to some extent, so unpresidential for just tweeting this out in the first place, and they could have gone with that, but they overreach so much that they become the issue, and they're idiocy, and no one's even talking about how silly it is for Trump to even be tweeting this.
Yeah, that is absolutely right, and I think everybody who has supported, the president in general, or even people who have had issues with the president who just support parts of his agenda, you hear about a Trump tweet in the news, and you're prepared for the worst. You're like,
you roll your eyes.
What did he do this time? But 2 days later, they take the story, and you're like, whatever he did, I hope he does all that and worse, because the overreach is just astonishing. And as people have had to point out to CNN, this guy's identity is not news. Where this meme came from is not news. If you want to cover the story of the President of the United States tweeting a juvenile meme, go ahead. That's news. Whether it's more important news than all the actual international issues going on right now is a separate question. But at least it's news. Where the guy who created the meme that got copied and 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 copied until eventually Trump saw it and retweeted it. That is not news. There is no part of that story that's news. So what are they doing touching this?
He reminds me of one particular female sideline reporter who had a little incident and is now out of a job. I mean, ESPN laid off a lot of people. Like, honey, you're interchangeable. It doesn't matter. There are other cute girls who come out of college, but there are other guys who make memes who may not have jobs, who may not do anything, but there are going to be thousands more like him. And look how much, it probably makes it that much cooler. Did you see the Kim.com compendium of all these memes? I
did not.
There are going to be so many more memes mocking CNN. How did this not occur to you in 2017? You just shut up about it, think, well, you know what? This gave us no harm. It may have even given us free publicity. Frankly, MSNBC is doing such a better job with leftist coverage than CNN. I'd be thankful for anything that makes me seem like I'm the big foe of Trump. Trump probably wants to promote CNN because they're stupider than MSNBC. So
yeah, well, if you're trying to make some sense out of what CNN's doing, it can kind of make some sense if they're trying to make a bid to take some of the far left market share from MSNBC.
And
they certainly put themselves in the spotlight for that.
But now, how much are they laughing about this at MSNBC? I mean, is Rachel Maddow, who's a pretty smart person, she's made her mistakes, but is she laughing with other people over there about just how stupid CNN is as her salary increases inevitably?
Well, I'd like to see people ask Maddow or whoever else, do they endorse this behavior from CNN or do they disavow it? Every time a conservative says something embarrassing, every conservative in the country is immediately asked whether they endorse or disavow it.
Fair enough.
I think it's time we did that. All sides around too. I mean, it's a really disgusting tactic. Oh, and by the way, I don't want to hear from anybody.
But to be fair, MSNBC didn't do this. They're not having the issues with their coverage of the White House that Jim Acosta is having, who I think is in over his head, as I just talked about with Jim Hoff. I think he's just in over his head. My point to him was, how did he just sit there when they moved CNN to the back row and people took pictures of him there? Why didn't he walk out? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, well, it's a fair point you make. MSNBC didn't do this. Let's be clear. This is not just the same old liberal media bias that Republicans have been complaining about for many years and is still going on. This is a serious escalation. This person was a private citizen, not the news, not the subject of any news, and CNN decided to make him news, to make him the subject of news because they didn't like him. They decided, we have it in our power to destroy you unless, we can parade you in front of the world, making the Stalinist show trial confession. This is unprecedented. I've never seen a news organization do anything like this before.
Nor do I think the news organization approved it. How did this guy even think he could do that? How does Andrew Kaczynski even have a job with CNN at this point, 24 hours later? How was he not fired immediately for this?
Well, if the person involved decides to seek legal action, I have a feeling we'll have the opportunity to have some of those questions answered.
I guess. I mean, CNN. Like, they fired 3 reporters recently because of another thing that was similarly stupid. And look, CBS, ABC, and NBC, MSNBC haven't had these problems. It's just a CNN unique problem. They're really screwing things up big time.
Right. Well, Trump picked them as his designated enemy for a reason. You know, remember when Obama decided, he was going to make Fox News the enemy, and therefore,
but he didn't have choices. He didn't have choices that Trump very calculatedly chose CNN over the others, and he must know something like that. There's some incompetence going on there that just isn't unique to the other networks. I don't know.
Right. Well, they certainly have not earned much sympathy from anybody, and I think a lot of people, including myself, who were rolling our eyes at the Trump tweets just a couple of days ago, are now sort of in sort of a this is war mentality, and these people have to be stopped.
Well, what do you think conservatives should take out of this? Even whether you want to consider CNN the equivalent of the other networks in the media or not.
I think what we have to do, we have to change the culture, and what that means is we have to end this assumption that you say something that doesn't fit within the narrow 1 degree sliver of acceptable mainstream liberal opinion, that it means someone out there has the license to try to destroy your life. I mean, not everybody is free to speak out. A lot of people are in a position where they speak their mind, their jobs are in danger, and it's not fair to ask anybody to be a sacrificial lamb, and fall down on the knife, sacrifice their ability to provide for their family in the name of free expression. But if you do have the ability, or if you do have the courage, just to speak your mind about anything, no matter what it is, just the more people who are out there saying what they believe, whatever it is that they believe, the more opinions are out there, the more free all of us will be, because the more opinions that are out there, the more difficult it's going to be to destroy and shame somebody for not having the one acceptable opinion, because people will be forced to confront the fact that people just see things differently, and you know what, it doesn't make them bad people.
And here we're sort of defending a guy, for all we know, he may have had really, we're 2 Jews talking here, really anti-Semitic stuff. I mean, look at what Baked Alaska, putting Laura Loomer in an oven, some meme with that, like in a concentration. I mean, there's some pretty anti-Semitic stuff that goes on, yes, on the right. So we may be defending a guy who is pretty abhorrent. I don't know. But I think your point is totally well taken. And by the way, Keith, I just want to mention, you work for a big law firm, so I'm appreciative of you coming on here. I have a little more freedom with this stuff than you do. We have about 3 minutes left. Just greater, we'll talk about Charlie Gard. I don't want to rush you into that 3 minutes. Maybe I'll even have you on tomorrow to talk about that. I don't want to get into that if we only have 2-3 minutes. Any other thoughts related to this, the media, and just maybe how you personally get the news? I get it from a few trusted tweeters now when there's a big story coming out.
Yeah, well, I certainly get all my news online. I've said for a long time that television news is for people getting 2 days ago news that for some reason weren't reading it online. I think that the most important point about this is people assume that this is not a free speech issue or whatever. People who defend this kind of bullying of people for their views just say, well, you have a right to say whatever you want, but you don't have any right to be protected from the consequences. And then people say that so often that it's such a cliche. And there's some truth in that, but it's not really entirely true, because where did those consequences come from? The consequences come from laws, right? Every corporation in America has got to be very careful, not to run afoul of anti-discrimination laws. It's very reputationally damaging if you get accused of discrimination. And one of the ways people accuse somebody else of discrimination is to say, oh, you created a hostile environment for me. And all right, so how do you go about proving what's a hostile environment? Well, if you say somebody made racist comments to me at work, you find racist comments that they made in their private lives, and it's evidence of what they may or may not have been doing at work. Yeah. So because we have this regime of laws, that in turn is what puts people's private lives, makes it fair game, to be acted on in the employment sphere or beyond. So it's not just like, citizens collectively, in a rage of righteous anger, have said, we're going to, banish people who express these thoughts that we don't like from polite society. It's really the thumb of government that's sort of helping that process along. And is there something we can do about that? Maybe, maybe not. But at the very least, what we can do is be conscious of it, and we shouldn't assume that it's just a matter of free market consequences when people are canned from their jobs or whatever for saying unpopular things.
Great points as usual, Keith Levenberg. Thank you for coming on Backlash on Shark Nation Radio with me, and we'll try to get you on as soon as possible again, maybe even tomorrow. We'll see what the news cycle is like tomorrow, because I do want to get your opinions on the Charlie Gard matter, and as a lawyer, you may have some really unique opinions, but we just don't have time today. Okay, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.